What's up, everybody? Welcome to Lumix Live this week. Excuse me, something in my throat there. So, welcome this week. We are obviously, as the title shows, we're going to be talking about the 25 to 50 millimeter f1.7, and just kind of covering and answering the questions that you guys have about the lens. So that we can, clear up some of the, like I already see some people are asking some questions about it. So we can clear up some of the confusion on some of the things that have been posted out there about it. Originally, I was planning to have my lens here to actually show you guys some of the capabilities and features of it, but unfortunately, I had to ship my unit out for someone to take a look at because we've got a pretty heavy backlog of people that want to take a look at that lens and have it paired up with their 10 to 25 1.7s as well. Just as a heads up, if you guys notice any kind of buffering or anything like that, it seems that even though I say this almost every week now, even though I've got an incredibly solid like 30 meg upload, OBS is saying that it's only pushing out between 4 to 6 megabit per second. But then on YouTube, it looks all good. So I don't really know what to believe anymore. But anyway, outside of that, if this is your first time joining us, these are our weekly live streams where we have conversations with photographers, videographers, or I sit here in front of the camera and talk for about an hour and answer a bunch of your questions from the chat to really kind of go into either heavy technical details about some stuff like what I'm going to show you guys with the Ronin RSC2 and my S1H here. So we've got some cool stuff to show about that. And clear up some stuff, like I said at the beginning, on lenses, cameras, how they fit into the ecosystem for either the G series or the S series. With these, if you have questions, these are highly interactive streams. So I love seeing comments from everybody, asking questions, getting those things into us so you have an answer directly from the source, from Panasonic Lumix here in the United States. If you have a question for me, make sure to tag at Lumix Cameras before your question. This way I see it pop up on my screen here and I can make sure I'm getting to the ones that are there. If you're not putting that in there, I might see it, I might not see it, so I apologize if I miss a question or if it takes me a while to get around to it. But yeah, just make sure you throw that at Lumix Cameras in front of it so I know that I see it here. Let's see. Outside of that, like we talk about every single week, I want to remind everybody about the Lumix Pro Services. We have two tiers, a red tier and a platinum tier. The red tier is free, gets you your 3-year warranty registration, gets you into the platform in the off chance that you run into a situation where you need to have your camera or lenses sent in for service and repair. And it's designed strictly to get you into a platform so that you know you've got a backbone of support there for you. Then there's the Platinum tier, which is a paid level here in the United States. This is really designed for maybe those of you that are using your cameras maybe a little bit more hardcore than some others, putting them into maybe a little bit more heavy-duty situations, or if you're someone who just really likes to have a good, solid support platform behind your camera. This tier gets you a really cool welcome kit with a strap, which I'll show you in a moment. Gets you that 3-year warranty, just like the free year, the free tier does, and that's for manufacturer warranty, stuff like that. You get 2-day turnaround repairs with free shipping both ways next day, or 2-day turnaround with free next day shipping both ways if you're in the Platinum series. As well as you get a direct phone number access into our service team. You get 20% off out of warranty repairs, so that's something like a drop or a physical break, things like that. And you're also getting those yearly sensor cleanings and lens cleanings in there. So if you're someone who's really utilizing your equipment a lot, it might be worth taking a look at. There are usually some prerequisites for getting into each of the tiers, just making sure you have a camera and lenses and stuff like that. So you can take a look at the QR code that was on that link. I'll put that back up at the end of the stream as well. So you'll be able to jump over and take a look at it. If you're not in the United States, there are other options in the Lumix Pro Services in different regions throughout the world. Not every region is in the Lumix Pro Service network at this time, so you can definitely take a look online, look up Lumix Pro Service. If I can pull the link up quick while we're doing this, I'll drop it in the chat, so you can see what's available in your particular region. So, outside of that, like I mentioned, this is the Peak Design custom strap that you're going to get with the Platinum series. And for those of you that had pre-ordered the GH5 Mark II, at least here in the United States, make sure that you followed up on your register or your pre-order benefit that you got for pre-ordering, which gets you 1 year of Platinum service for free. So outside of that, let's talk about the lens and address some of the questions I see here. So one of the first questions that I know a number of people have been asking is whether or not the lens is parfocal. So the Lumix lenses, 10 to 25 and the 50 to 200, lenses like our the 70 to 300 for the S series, yes, they are parfocal. They are electronically parfocal, though. So if you're coming from a more cinema-oriented background where you're looking at, larger PL primes that are mechanically parfocal, this is a little different. This uses the focusing mechanisms in the lens to help maintain the focus point throughout the range. So yes, the 25 to 50 from the testing that I've done with it and the testing that I know Matt has done with it is parfocal. I am looking to get some more details as to why there were a couple people that have had hands-on with the lens where it wasn't acting as parfocal for them. But yeah, it's designed to be parfocal. So minimized focus breathing, designed to keep you focus as you zoom through the range. But I do have to get a little bit more information to see what exactly was up with those, at least the ones in the US, because that's who I can reach out to see what was going on during their testing. But outside of that, just like the 10 to 25, similarly designed. And for those who haven't actually seen the lens yet, or what the lens can actually do, the quality that you get out of it, I do have a video queued up that I'll play in a few minutes after I get through a couple more questions, and we'll kind of then go from there and continue answering some of your all's questions. Let's see here. A couple people more commenting about the parfocal nature of it. Yes, like I said, it is designed to be electronically parfocal. The other question, can you compare the depth of field versus a 42.5? Well, yeah. So if you're looking at the 42.5 f1.7 that we have in the Lumix lineup, from a field of view perspective and an aperture perspective, if you put the 25 to 50 at 42.5, roughly, since you do get, on a GH5 Mark II, you do get the distance scale, so it'll tell you what focal length you're actually at as you're zooming, you're going to have incredibly similar depth of field and performance, pretty much identical, to an actual 42.5 fixed focal length lens. And that's one of the design goals behind the pair of lenses, the 10 to 25 and the 25 to 50. You can realistically, in the real world, an actual taking these things out and shooting with them, you can treat them as if you've got a bag full of primes. And that's why when you look at a lot of people asking, well, why does the lens do 25 to 50? Why is it overlap on that 25 millimeter between the two different optics? Well, it's because, one, a 50 millimeter focal length is a fairly central point that a lot of people, I'm willing to bet if you took, if you're a photographer, if you took your Lightroom catalog and you analyzed what your most commonly used focal lengths are, I think a lot of people would be surprised what range you're actually primarily shooting in. Now, that's not for everybody. A lot of people, there are many different specialties out there. If you shoot wildlife and that kind of shooting, yeah, you're probably much, much longer than 100 millimeter in field of view. But for the average person, and I tested this myself by taking my Lightroom catalog, and I found that the average focal lengths that I actually really hang in for the most part is between 20 and 85 millimeter. And 85 millimeter is actually kind of the farthest up that I would shoot. And a lot of it's because, we're doing stuff like this. I'm not going to use longer than something like 35 millimeter for this. I mean, right now I use the 12 millimeter Summilux on the BGH1, and that gets me a pretty decent field of view. When I'm using something like my S1H on this RSC2 that's just off camera, that camera's got the 20 to 60 millimeter on it. Because usually I'm focusing on around 20 to 20 to 50-ish millimeter when I'm doing any kind of like gimbal work or tracking work. So you look at what aperture and what focal length these lenses offer, and it basically fits in a vast majority of what a lot of people want to kind of hang in for lenses that are going to stick on their cameras for a while. Before I answer the rest of those questions, just want to finish this one thought up. The other thing to look at is when you are designing a lens like this, like the 10 to 25, which is a phenomenal lens. If you check the reviews on it, you speak to people who actually own the lens and shoot with it, it's an incredibly high-performing lens, and it's great for its field of view and its size. The biggest thing that offsets some people is that when you look at a lens like this on paper, it looks like it should be big, heavy, and kind of unwieldy on a lot of the cameras. But on a G9, on a GH5, GH5 Mark II, and I'm sure in the upcoming, when we release a GH6, you're going to see that this lens is incredibly well balanced with a lot of these cameras. So that design goal and that plan carries into the 25 to 50 as well. We know that a lot of people use lenses like this on gimbals. And if you're not having to change lenses and rebalance when you're in the Micro Four Thirds category, that's a big benefit for speed to get yourself through an entire shoot. So a lens like the 10 to 25, the one challenge with that lens is the wider you go, the more likely you are to need the lens to actually kind of telescope out a little bit. Well, the 25 to 50 doesn't do that. It is an internal zooming lens. So that means when I have it on my gimbal and I'm zooming from 25 to 50 millimeter to change my field of view, the lens stays the same length. And even on top of that, like a lot of our lenses that we design in the full frame series that don't telescope out, they are also designed to keep the center of balance pretty much where it's supposed to be when you're on something like a gimbal. So if you're shooting at 25 and zoom out to 50 mil, you're not going to have to rebalance your gimbal with something like this. Where if you're on the full frame S series, that's really what, say, like the 1.8 series lenses is designed for. You can do a quick lens swap, and you know that your center of gravity is going to be the same on the body when you have it attached to the actual gimbal. So you're not really going to have to worry too much about that. So that's the last kind of point I had on that one. Two other questions we got here. Steve's asking, will the linear focus feature of this and other lenses, is it supported on the G9 body? So at this point, I don't have any information. The only cameras in the Micro Four Thirds line, or actually the only camera in the Micro Four Thirds line, I believe, that supports linear focus at this time is the GH5 Mark II. I would love to see it. We talked about this a couple times last month when we were talking very heavily about the GH5 Mark II. We'd love to see that in other cameras, but unfortunately at this time, I just don't have enough information to know if it is a physical limitation of some of the cameras or if it's just a matter of we're not there yet. But that's what a lot of these streams and these conversations are about, is as you guys are requesting this kind of stuff, as we hear more information, you're going to find out whether it's here. If you're getting subscribed to our emails, if you're following us on social, you'll find that kind of information out as we release it out. So let's see here. The other question here, Alan says, I know it's non-telescoping, but that's not true of the 10 to 25, is it? Is there a complete list somewhere of non-telescoping Lumix zoom lenses? There isn't a list that I know of lenses that are non-telescoping. I don't know if we've ever actually had to create a list like that. But, you know, lenses like the 35 to 100, the, 35 to 100, the 45 to 200. I will take a look and see if I can find a list, and then I will make sure to post it in the comments this video when we're done. But yeah, the 10 to 25 does telescope when you're zooming on that lens, and that's mainly because you've got an ultra-wide lens to a more standard lens, and ultra-wide lenses, when you're trying to keep within a certain design goal, there are some things that change there. But the 10 to 25, when I've had it mounted on the Ronin gimbal I've got here, I haven't noticed much of an issue when I'm zooming between 25 and 10 millimeter of any kind of major balance issues with it. I think it's still well within what the motors are designed to manage. So you may run into a little bit of a challenge, but shouldn't be much, versus the 25 to 50, which is going to be very well balanced across the entire focal range. Let's see here. The other question here. Is electronic parfocal part of Micro Four Thirds definition, or is that limited to Panasonic? No idea. I just know that with the S-series cameras, we started making lenses that we were able to control the focus mechanisms as we changed the focal length. So that allowed us to basically create the same effect of a mechanically parfocal lens, just with more modern technology. I truly don't know if it's it's definitely not a Micro Four Thirds specific thing, because our S-series, the Pro S-series lenses do the same thing. So, all right. So I think that looks like a good set of the questions there. Again, if you guys have more questions about the lens, or when I start talking about the Ronin and stuff, make sure to drop at Lumix Cameras before it, and I'll be able to address it. With that, I'm going to show you guys the video that we did for the launch of the 25 to 50 millimeter, and then we'll come back and continue the conversation. So let's take a look at that.
Panasonic.
So yeah, that was a quick video that was shot for the launch, just to kind of give you guys an idea of how the different capabilities of the lens looks when it's actually out in the field and you're using it. So a couple things to highlight there. You know, it is a truly stepless iris design on this camera, or on the lens. So that means that you're looking at being able to smoothly adjust your aperture. With our cameras, it would be 1/10 increments as you go to zoom through it. So like 1.7, 1.8, 1.9, 2, 2.1, that kind of thing. And it is designed so that you're able to just easily rack through those. So if you're someone who's got gimbal set up and you're using follow focus motors or something like that, you could easily attach something like that to an aperture and actually pull your aperture if you're working to really keep it totally manual and customized to your end for filming. But the other really cool thing about that lens is, just like we demonstrated on the GH5 Mark II live stream where we went out into the park just outside of downtown Austin, the lenses, a lot of the newer lenses that we're designing, like our 12 to 60, our 8 to 18, some of those lenses for Micro Four Thirds, are designed with a stepless iris motor. What that means is that if you're someone who shoots in, say, shutter priority, because you just want to have the camera do 180 degree, or you want to have it set to a specific shutter, and then you want to have either ISO or aperture control your exposure so you can get dark to bright shots or bright to dark shots, The iris doesn't do what traditional photographic lenses do, which is you see that click step down or step up in the aperture, which gives you that momentary brightness in an image or the momentary dimness in an image. So the lens is designed really to give you that solid performance when you're actually working with this lens in a real-world environment. One of the questions that I do see in here that's kind of relevant to a lot of this stuff is if I were to put the lens on your Olympus, I think it's an M1 Mark III, what functionalities would I lose or would change? So Lumix lenses with an aperture ring where you can manually control the aperture typically, and I can't confirm this because I don't work for Olympus and I can't speak for their cameras, but I can tell you how our lenses work, is that the aperture ring itself may or may not work on the other Micro Four Thirds cameras. It's a matter of them implementing the control language since it's being transmitted through the mount into our camera bodies. So you may lose that a little bit. Outside of that, I don't think there's anything else that would be different between using the two cameras or using that lens on that camera. Like most things, lens correction information, so stuff like that that's very common in modern day optics for pretty much every single camera company. You're going to be looking at that information that's embedded with the raw file. So when you bring it into something like Lightroom or Capture One, well, Lightroom, I haven't tested Capture One, it'll automatically apply lens corrections. That's why if you're someone who does like to create or put your own profiles on things, when you go into an RW2 raw file from Lumix into something like Lightroom, it says this lens profile is already applied. That's why it doesn't show up in the drop-down list. So it's already there in the file for it. It's just added information that tells the software what to do with it. Let's hear. We have another question here from Alexander. It says, off topic, which perfectly fine. This is a relatively loose topic because an entire stream on a single lens is a bit crazy. That's why I've got a couple other things lined up for everybody. It's off topic, but the GH5 Mark II, does the live streaming direct from camera do mono or stereo audio? Can you switch? Mono would be helpful for using two microphones. So the way the cameras typically work, if you're plugging in, say you're plugging in to the standard mic jack 3.5 in on the camera, you could plug in two mics into that, and it'll, I believe it'll be left channel, right channel, so it'll be stereo. If you use the XLR1, which is somewhere over there, the actual XLR1 audio adapter allows you to take dual XLR in and then pump them in as one channel. So you are able to do all of it in, two inputs in, so that it comes across as a mixed channel. Otherwise, you can set it up to do stereo if you wanted that. If you're trying to do like binaural audio, you could theoretically do it that way as well. It doesn't give you a switch in the camera to change stereo to mono. But yeah, your intermediary between the microphones and the camera is what you would want to have set up to make sure that that's pumping in as a single audio stream. Another question here. Can the BGH1 do live streaming on YouTube? So no, the BGH1 does not have the RTMP protocols. It has RTSP. Which is the way that the camera can do the 4K 60p in either HEVC or H.264 compression for up to 60p. And that's a little different. That's working as an IP camera, so you'd still need something like OBS or vMix or some other software that can take an RTSP signal in to then act as your encoder to send up. The Mark II, the GH5 Mark II is the only camera in the lineup that actually does do direct RTMP streaming in the Lumix lineup. We do have a couple camcorders that have the same functionality. So if you need a camcorder style option, we do have cameras that can do that as well. So yeah, hopefully that answers that. Darren says, does the latest firmware update for the G9 allow the camera to be natively recognized by Windows 10 as a video device for Zoom, Teams, IA, eliminating the need for webcam software? No. I don't know any camera company that would just plug in and show up as a webcam without having some sort of driver installed on the computer. We have the Lumix webcam drivers available, which all that's doing is it's just basically adding the protocol in that when you plug the camera in and you select tether on the back of the camera for the cameras that do support it hardware-wise, then it will pop up and show in and work as a attached webcam for Zoom, Teams. I think Skype has some weird issues still, but I know with Microsoft pushing everybody to go over to Teams, especially if anyone's followed the Windows 11 announcements and the release and all that stuff, Teams is really what they're pushing with it. But yeah, we've used it numerous times. I've used it numerous times. And yeah, it literally acts as a webcam once you install the drivers that we've released for it, which I will find a link to and drop that in the comments right after this video or in the description for the video. Cool. All right, so that looks like we're pretty good on those questions right now. So one of the other things that we wanted to talk about today was actually the other announcement that we made yesterday. We made a very quiet announcement about features that are coming to the S-Series cameras. Now, these are not available for your cameras right this moment, so you have to wait a little bit longer for when firmware comes out to add this support for your cameras. But what it added is compatibility with the DJI Ronin RS2 and RSC2 for the ability to use what's called Active Track. It's a DJI tool that's built in with their Ronin RS2 and RSC2 are the specific two models that allow this to work. Typically, you had to use their attachment piece called a Raven Eyes to enable this functionality. And what this does is this basically allows you to have the gimbal act as a tracking tool. So it takes the information in, you're able to select a region in the traditional way that you would do this. You're able to select a region, tell it, hey, follow this area. If you've been following online, YouTube, seen the videos, you've seen this kind of thing in action. Well, with the S-Series cameras, you no longer need to use the Raven Eyes extra accessory that you have to buy to go with your RS2 or your RSC2. This is now something that can be done directly with the USB-C connection for the multicam connection right into the Ronin RS2 or RSC2. So DJI updated their firmware, and just as a full point of clarity, the interaction and control and troubleshooting and stuff like that that you guys may have with the RS2 or RSC2, it's on DJI side. Our camera just happens to, the protocols are there, so they integrated it, and our cameras with the next firmware update is going to be able to actually work with that language. So if you're having an issue with any kind of challenge with the Ronin itself, you got to go check out and work with DJI on that. It's the same kind of situation you run into if you're having an issue with an Atomos recorder or the Blackmagic recorder working with the cameras as well. So, like I said, what this does is this uses our system to actually allow you to have the Ronin actually control movement for the camera. So, hopefully my camera did not go to sleep. So I've got my S1H here. So this is an S1H. I have it connected to my Ronin RSC2, which actually I'll do this. Go right back here so you guys can see. I got it all attached up. And I'm just running an HDMI cable out from the S1H into my switcher here so you guys can actually see the display and what you've got going on. When you have the camera set up and you're using the face detect mode, so right now I've got face detect turned on, and as you can see, we've got me in the camera here. When you have all the firmware updated, all you're going to have to do is just click the trigger on the Ronin, and now, as I move, it would help if I actually clicked the trigger, wouldn't it? Ah, there it goes. It would help if I click the right button for this, too. Or that it was actually recognizing that my camera is attached. it's always good to make sure that you actually have the cables plugged in. So we're going to go back to this screen while I do this and select PC tether. There it goes. Hey, it always works when the camera actually says, hey, I am connected to the gimbal. So let's do this again. I should have checked and made sure that the little camera icon was on the bottom. So now that it's attached, we've got the face detect box on. I just pull the trigger, and then now, and as you can see, this is, I'm going to put up the picture-in-picture. This is totally hands-free, so I'm going to step away from the mic for a second here. So yeah, as you can see, this is tracking and following me, and there's no additional pieces attached to this. So if I go back to this screen here and I turn the tracking off, unplug the HDMI, show you guys straight up here, there is no Ravenized piece attached to this. This is literally just the USB-C connection cable plugged into the gimbal, and it's running. So you're going to have a pretty solid option if you're a one-person shooter and you need something to be able to move around with, be able to track someone with it, and just be able to not have to necessarily worry about all of the crazy camera movements that you have to kind of really focus on. Let's see here. Let me make sure that chat is still running, because YouTube just is yelling at me at this moment that there is no data going to YouTube. So hopefully everyone is still there. Let's open up this. Oh, okay, cool. There are the questions. Or there are the comments. All right, I see everyone's still there. So yeah, this is a really, really cool feature that's added in to the S-Series cameras when we have the firmware update that comes out soon for it. So I can see a lot of people out there that may really want to be able to play around with this, and I'm happy to address some questions if you guys have them about this particular feature with it. A couple things that I do know off the top of my head from playing around with it for the last couple of days, since I only just got the ability to actually play around with this. This is obviously the first update of this kind of setup, so it's going to be functional with the S1, S5, S1R, and the S1H. The S1H, because of the hardware, is able to do, you're able to have everything all set up, and you can still have HDMI out and have everything working with it. So it becomes basically one of the best options if you're looking to be able to shoot something like Blackmagic RAW or ProRes RAW. I almost forgot the name of that other one. And you want to be able to use this on a gimbal while still having your monitor and your camera control with the gimbal and stuff like that here. And I think I just clicked that. We're going to turn that off because I just hit the remote. Yeah, it basically becomes one of the perfect tools for, a single person shooter that needs ultimate flexibility in a small compact package. And like I said, I'm using this on the RSC2. The RS2 is the one that has the nicer rear screen on it, so you're able to actually see an image and pull down for Active Track and some of the other really cool stuff with it. So, yeah. Let's see here. Is that available for the G series like the G9 or the GH5? Currently, it is only available. So for the Active Track thing that we just showed, currently that is only available on the S series cameras. Honestly, I have no information as to whether or not other cameras in the lineup are equipped to be able to do it. But if it's something that you guys want to see in other cameras, let us know. Sound off in the chat, because if you've been following a lot of the updates, a lot of the firmware and the development that we've been doing on a lot of our cameras, a lot of it comes from what you guys actually tell us, like what you're actually shooting, how you guys are working with this stuff in the field. So it lets you actually be able to kind of have a say in the priorities and the things that you want to see in our cameras in the future. So let's hear. Michael says, does it track faces or anything the camera has selected on focus? So I did test this. It does need face detection, so face, eye, head, and body tracking. that uses the that has the system enabled for it. It will not. You can't just point the camera at something, click the active track, and then have it run. So you do need to be in face, eye, body, head. And I did test this with my dog, which I was gonna have my dog in here because the internet loves dogs. Well, for the most part, to show that it does also work with animal tracking. But he's sleeping on the couch. So it's kind of a really cool thing that we've seen, that it has the ability to do this not just in the photo modes or in the video modes, but even if you're doing this with photography, and you want to be able to have something track, and you don't necessarily have the speed to be able to move the remote, and you want to have, burst shooting, you could use this in photography as well. And I do plan on using this to do some cool time-lapse work and stuff like that. So here, Alexander, regarding the previous question about mono audio on the GH5 Mark II streams, I believe the XLR1 can duplicate mono signal or record stereo, but not condense stereo to mono, what I'm interested in. I believe you're right. I think it will take two signals in, and then you'll get a stereo track into the camera, but it'll be both channels will have the as I'm clipping, both channels will have the same audio on it. So you can condense it that way, but you can't do. I don't think you can condense stereo to mono. I will have to double check on that though. It's not often that I have to dig too far into the audio side of the brand. Let's see here. What else we got? We answered that one. Ricardo's saying it would be great for interview, panel, video discussion, especially if you have multicam for that. Yeah. So like a lot of people, obviously more video functionality is becoming things that we're having to just do more and more these days. And being able to automate as much of it as you can, as long as it's reliable, is one of the things that can actually help streamline your production, streamline the amount of time it takes you to be just setting things up to be able to go. Something like this, I think, once people get it actually into their hands, I'm going to be very excited to see how people actually utilize this in the real world, because it's definitely a really fun addition to the cameras. And as of right now, it's the only camera that can do it in a direct, without any additional pieces of hardware for it. Alex says, I could use a third-party solution, but it would be nice to not need another piece and keep it simple. Team can look at it. Yeah, I will. I'll definitely bring that in with our team to see if it's something that they can take a look at. I think I've got enough information here to pass it on to it. And that's, again, the cool thing with these streams. You guys ask questions, you guys put feature requests in, and we can provide them over to our team. Vincent says, does the new firmware of the S series fix the fact to confirm face on the autofocus face detection? I'm not sure what you're asking. To confirm the face? If you could give me a little more clarity as to what you're asking, I can try to answer it. But the firmware update that's coming primarily is built around the S1 and the S5, since it's bringing the Blackmagic RAW to both of those cameras. So as a reminder, with every time you have a camera firmware update that's going to add something like that, so for the S1 and the S5, they're getting B-RAW, you're going to want to make sure that you also have your video assist updated as well. Usually those updates come around the same time. Around the same time as the firmware update comes for the cameras. Sometimes usually comes a couple of days early, like the release for the Ronin stuff. So yeah, just make sure you're always keeping your equipment up to date. Okay, cool. So one of the other things that I wanted to, and you guys can keep asking questions, I'm going to go to, there's a couple things that we didn't get to last week that I want to make sure that I cover now, because I actually feel bad that I missed some of these questions from last week during our normal AMA session. So let me get this open, and let me take a drink of water. Yes, it is just water. Okay. So, where was that one question here? So you can tell specs about the 25 to 50. We answered that one. So there's been a lot of people that have been asking questions about the future updates of cameras or lenses that are coming out. And I just want to make sure that I put a blanket statement out there. We don't comment on future development or future products coming out. So I understand people always have questions and you guys always want to, kind of get the inside scoop of what's coming. But just know that it's not like, I'm purposely trying to dodge a question. We just can't answer them. So unfortunately, unfortunately, it's just what we can't do. Let's see here. Sergey says, bought the 25 to 50 1.7 in Sydney in April. Loving the G9. Oh, pre-ordered it. Was that when we actually did the development announcement for it? Because the lens isn't shipping yet. I'd be curious if you actually already have that lens. That would be very surprising. So let's see here. Some of the other questions that we had. Yes. So the other update with the wow, my brain is a little scattered today. I apologize, everybody. One of the other benefits that's coming with the update, and if you are someone who uses an RS2, and if you happen to be one of those people that uses the S1R for photo and video usage, the Ronin RS2 and the RSC2 are also now compatible with the S1R, so you can plug the cable in and you can run the control there with it. For those that don't know, we always have a lot of people that ask us about photography and, what kind of things you can do and talk about with what updates can come for photographers and stuff like that. This was something that was asked last week. And additions like this, as primarily a photographer myself, I never would have actually really envisioned picking up a gimbal as something that I would ever think of to use as a photography tool. If you've never looked into them before and you are a photographer, it can actually be something really cool to add to your kit. If you do things like time-lapse, if you do gigapixels, if you want to be able to record landscapes and shoot ultra high-resolution shots, so even higher resolution than what the pixel shift modes do in our cameras, because the gimbals usually are coming with a number of extra features that allow you to go in there and plan out motions and track certain things. And then now with this Active Track edition, the photography side of it can actually be pretty cool. Since you're able to still control the camera, you can be able to track a subject and just be triggering the shutter, not necessarily with the gimbal, since that's just going to trigger video. But yeah, you have the ability to use these kinds of things for a photography standpoint as well, too. So it's a really cool addition for this stuff. Let's see, we got a question here. Do the S-Series users have access to the full set of features that B-RAW has to offer in DaVinci Resolve with the BM cameras? The only thing I know that isn't technically in there is, I believe, the highlight recovery, and I think that's on Resolve to add in for. And then there's some slight little differences when you look at the way ISO and white balance are represented in software. There's a number of ways that software represents what your ISO is when you're editing Blackmagic RAW or ProRes RAW in post. A slider versus actually selecting a numerical ISO value from a drop-down list pretty much do the same thing. It's how that information is represented to you. Similar thing with white balance. If you're someone who's used to working with, say, Cinema DNG, it's going to be a little different working with the compressed RAW formats like ProRes RAW or Blackmagic RAW. So you're going to have a couple little different things there. But your white balance shifting and your ISO or exposure changing, it's just a matter of whether, like I said, it's displayed as a slider or if it's displayed as a drop-down numerical list. Good example of this is if you look at ProRes RAW in Final Cut, you actually get a drop-down list of the different ISO values. If you look in Resolve or the plugin for Premiere with Blackmagic, it's a slider. Similarly, if you look at ProRes RAW in Premiere, it's a slider. So they all do pretty much the same thing, just displayed differently. And for stuff like that, I would highly suggest, if there's challenges you run in with it, check with the provider of the software that you're working with. But yeah, other than that, I think it pretty much provides the same, because it's recording it onto their device. And yeah, remember too that the Blackmagic RAW, this is the first iteration of it with the S series cameras. So the S1, the S5, and the S1H support Blackmagic RAW. When you're using the Video Assist 12G, so it's either the 5 or the 7-inch one, and if you look at if you look at the ProRes RAW timeline, I get them screwed up sometimes. If you look at the ProRes RAW timeline from when it first launched, there were some limited capabilities in software, and then eventually software caught up, and then now you see that ProRes RAW has a lot more support if you're a Resolve shooter, or if you're a Final Cut editor or a Premiere editor. If you're a Resolve shooter, you got to go Blackmagic RAW. But that's the nice kind of benefit there, is that the S1, S5, and the S1H are going to be able to flexibly shoot either, depending on your editing suite and which monitors you use. So you've got a ton of different options there in those three different cameras. And you have a lot of different functionality between those three cameras. So if you need something that's ultra, reliable, that is, if you happen to be someone who's looking to spec out a camera because you want to, eventually shoot a project for, say, Netflix, or you want to shoot a project for some other higher end stuff, and you want to at least have a baseline of what camera spec you're shooting with, that our S1H is top of the tier. It's the only camera, it's the only mirrorless interchangeable lens camera that was to the standard that Netflix, the Netflix Post Technology Alliance, was willing to put their categorization on. And under their testing, it met their specs. So if that is something that's important to you, it's a really nice benefit for it. If you're someone who needs to be able to shoot on a gimbal with an external monitor out, and you still want to use the on-screen display, this is like the ultimate camera for it. If you want to shoot ultra compact, lightweight, be really kind of, cognizant of your footprint while you're shooting, an S1 or an S5 with a gimbal is a really, really solid option. You still have that ability to go out over HDMI if you want. You can still do ProRes RAW and Blackmagic RAW. But you do want to just remember that the S1 and the S5 don't have low-pass filters on the sensor. So you are going to have a much sharper looking image, which in some scenarios may not be the best option, depending on the style of shooting that you do. So that's enough on those things there. Says, I think you're right about BM needing to make that available for third-party cameras data. Yeah, so ultimately, I'm not pushing or hounding on Blackmagic or Apple or any of the companies that make the editing software. Ultimately, if it's something that you feel you're missing from the software, you would want to bring that up with the manufacturer. So it's the same like what we do. If there are features in our cameras and you guys let us know in the chat, we take a look at it and we listen to everything that you guys say, whether it's here or on social media. I see all of it. And we report that stuff into our team, and then, it lets them start going down the path to see what's possible, what's impossible with the current hardware, and then ways to improve things down the line. So ultimately know that your voices that you'll have here on the YouTube streams that we do, over on Facebook, on Instagram, on Twitter, all the platforms that we interact on, we do see the comments and we do read them. So let's see here. One of the questions. Currently, when you use... Okay, so this is a follow-up to the face detection thing. So this is perfect. Thank you for following up on this. Currently, when you use face detect in AFC, you need to click on a button to confirm the subject you want in focus. And we need to do that every time. Gotcha. Okay, I think I know what you're referencing. So if you have multiple people in the frame, and you've got the face detect boxes, and you've got all the different kind of... one will be yellow with the white crosshair. The others, I believe, are white boxes. If you do want to tell the camera, say, hey, track this person, you do have to tell it which of those faces you want it to lock onto. If it's a single solitary person, excuse me, just like we saw in the little demo I gave before, if it's a single person, you don't have to click a button or confirm anything if it's a single person. When you have multiple people, like any system, you basically have to tell it, hey, focus on this person. But that does bring up actually a added feature that we did on the cameras that actually I did have a conversation with somebody about this who didn't know that this is actually how that works. So I'm going to see if I can do this. I'm going to see if I can do this without actually seeing the buttons on hand. So let me go zoom this in a little bit. Get up here. All right, so we're going to go back onto this camera here. So as you can see, I've got face detection turned on right now. So I've got, this is just face detect AF. So it's the mode. If I go onto the camera, this is the part I was saying I got to figure out if I can do. There it is. So I'm in the AF mode with face, animal, body, all that kind of detection. If I turn animal detection off, there it goes. It's the human detection, which is just now shorthand for head, face, eye, and body. The option that a lot of people don't realize has been, I remember I'm talking to this camera. The option that a lot of people may not realize has been added to the S-Series cameras is that when you go back into that AF selection mode, I can go over here and go to one area, and I can have my normal one area, where is my one area? There it is. So I have my one area. I can now also add, by clicking that AF button and pressing up on the directional pad, there it goes, I can add face and body detection. So when a face is on this point, so this the center AF point, and a face is anywhere in that range, it's going to revert to the face detection box. But then if I move out of the way of it, you see it moves to the body detection because it sees my body. And then if I move back in, now it's back on my face. So that can help, I think, in a situation like what you're describing, is if you have a ton of people there, if you use one area or one area plus and then turn face and body recognition on, that might actually help your scenario, so you're not having to necessarily confirm which face you want to have all the time, and maybe cut out that extra couple of clicks that you end up having to do. Let's see here. We got time for a couple more questions. Sacred says, I have the S1H and it's the best camera I've ever owned. I love hearing that. It says, you should do more outside streams. They are the best, especially when it's hot. That was a fun stream. Maybe downtown Austin next time. Yes, so I am actually planning to do a couple more streams from outside. With my GH5 Mark II, I would love to do some more of the AMA streams, so maybe once a month. There's a couple really cool coffee shops downtown. The biggest challenge is just obviously making sure that I have a strong enough upload there. Whether I'm going to do this remotely on my phone, which we've demonstrated, I've showed you guys that it works, or if I'm going to do it connecting into a business network. There's a ton of places around that have a decent wireless network. But if that's something you guys want to see on the stream, definitely let me know, because I have some really cool ideas. Maybe not necessarily following photographers around. I could always bring Todd back and we can do some more stuff. I have 2 lavaliers now, thanks to Todd, who gave me I think it's a Sarmonic 2-channel, single receiver, 2-channel transmitter lav system. So you'd actually be able to hear them, and I don't have to do the microphone thing. But yeah, that's some cool stuff that we can do. I know everyone loves seeing my office, but going outside is definitely going to be a nice thing. Though again, as you said, Sacred, maybe not when it's 113 degrees out again. Cool. Well, that's about as much as I was going to cover. The last couple little points I wanted to make is, kind of rounding back to the 25 to 50 millimeter. Obviously, we only talked about the 25 to 50 millimeter for maybe about 20 minutes total, but I'm really excited to see what people do with that lens when it comes out. If you're someone who is a photographer and you're looking at, is this a lens that would fit your style, fit your portfolio of optics that you want to shoot with? I highly encourage you to take a look at the software or the websites that you can use at your own risk, obviously, of that can review your Lightroom catalogs if you're a Lightroom user. You'd probably be surprised what focal lengths you're probably sticking in most often. So it lets you really kind of, see what works best for you. Outside of that, you still get, you're still getting, basically a bag full of primes with that 25 to 50. And then you pair it with a 10 to 25, and you've got everything from 20 millimeter out to 100 millimeter in 2 lenses. If you're a 2-camera shooter, you've got one lens on one camera, one lens on the other camera, and you're basically golden for about 90% of the things that are going to be shot if you're an event, wedding, portrait, or even a street photographer. And then most importantly, since stores are starting to open back up and a lot of us are able to go back into photo retail stores, not everywhere, of course. I know different regions are having different challenges these days still. But if you're able to get into a local store when the lens starts shipping, or if they, you check in with a local rep and you see that, they're going to be running an event there and we're going to have the lens at the store, definitely go take a look at it. Because one of the biggest things that I think a lot of us get into, especially over the last year, is things always look very different online than they do when you actually get them in hand. And I can tell you, the 10 to 25 and the 25 to 50, if you've never held those lenses before, or the 10 to 25, go to a store, get one in your hands, and actually kind of see it, put it on a camera. They're a joy to shoot with, and they're a lot of fun. I wish I had mine here so that I could actually show you guys, because I would put it up on the BGH1 and we could actually do some really cool stuff with it. But we'll probably do that next week when I get the lens back. Let's see here. The other question, you seem to have better connectivity outside, although I made that joke. You were in the park and you started buffering. Yeah. This is the joys of Spectrum, or I think it's Comcast or whoever owns Spectrum, Charter. Joys of internet connection where it works perfectly fine all the way up until about 1 p.m. Central Time, and then it decides to just go, nah, for about a half hour, and then we're back up to perfectly fine. So, outside of that, I know a couple of weeks ago, I had asked everybody that normally is joining these chats to give us recommendations or suggestions. If you guys feel that you want to see these Lumix Live events at a different time or a different date, let us know. We're always open to being more flexible with when we're actually doing these events. Knowing that people are starting to get back into work, people are starting to get back into, not having all the time to spend on a Thursday afternoon, middle of the day. We are 100% open to shifting the date and times on these. So if you guys have recommendations, either shoot us an email over at lumixlive@us.panasonic.com. Go over to our Twitter page. I'm working on, we might do a poll. We might put up a poll over on the Twitter page as well. Have to figure out the logistics of that because I've never done them before, which just kind of shows how out of touch with Twitter I am. To get recommendations from y'all as to what makes the most sense for you if you want to see these streams move to a different date and time. Actually, I'll take these last 2 questions and then we'll call it. Vin says, little thing maybe for the next firmware. Let us have the possibility to simplify the rec quality menu. To switch from 5.9K to 4K 50, we need to cross many options. Which camera are you working on, Vincent? The S series, so the S1H and the GH5 Mark II have the ability to filter your recording options, and the anamorphic modes and the standard modes are all in the same normal, all on one page. You don't have to go activate anamorphic somewhere. So a lot of that is stuff that's just been built over time. Okay, you have an S1. I will bring that up to our UX designers or UI designers. Is it UX or UI? One of those two. To let them know about that. Because, having a unified menu system is definitely an important thing. But obviously, like most things, I cannot make promises of any kinds of changes. I can just make sure that I bring the suggestions up to the team members that are involved there. Ulrich says it's perfect at 8 p.m. in Germany. Alan says same for the UK. Yeah. The original thought process between 1 p.m. Central or 2 p.m. Eastern was that we knew that that would be a little bit later in the UK and Germany. But, you know, we always want to kind of fluctuate and see and make sure we're getting as many people as possible. But yeah, that's really cool. Let's see here. I'll be getting the 25 to 50, great for indoor editorial and small, medium-sized events. Just got the 10 to 25, and that thing is stunning. Yes, it is, Ricardo. Any chance of seeing an anamorphic attachment being revived? I don't think we would do anything with an anamorphic adapter. It's just really not something that you would, I think, see from a major camera manufacturer. There are plenty of optics manufacturers making anamorphic lenses that are starting to make them actually a lot less expensive. I think Soray is a really good one as well. So you're probably not going to see much directly from us, but we'll always keep adding the modes in there because anamorphic truly is just an open gate mode, especially on like an S1H where you've got 6K open gate. So it's just a matter of different recording options, or if you're someone shooting in 6K anamorphic on a GH5 or a GH5 Mark II, then you've just got that, you know, kind of full extra height and a little bit of extra width to record and crop and post with. So it'd be great to have unified menus in the S1 and the S5. Yeah. As this stuff develops and grows, we will always bring those comments into our engineers and see what is possible, especially within timelines. You know, there's always, you know, how much time can actually be devoted to certain things, and where it would sit in a category of the requests that we get. So always sound off in the chat. Let us know what, or in the comments of this video afterwards. Let us know what you guys think of the time changes, if it makes sense at all. The date change, if you guys feel that there's a better day during the week to do these, let us know. Outside of that, I want to remind everybody again before I go, the Lumix Pro Services here in the United States, the Red membership is free, gets you the 3-year warranty, gets you into the emailing list. You'll hear all the stuff fresh as soon as we make announcements. Platinum Series, it's our paid tier. That gets you 2-day returns with next-day delivery on repairs. You get a welcome kit, direct hotline into our support team, as well as sensor cleanings and all that kind of fun stuff. With that, I want to thank everybody for joining me this week. It's a little more free-formed stream this week, covering a big group of different topics here. But I loved all the questions you guys have here. So make sure if you liked this kind of content, or if you like all the content that we're doing on Lumix Live, or even if you only like some of it, make sure to give us a like on the videos. Make sure to subscribe to the channel. It helps me out tremendously to keep being able to bring this content to you guys. If you have suggestions for future topics you want to see us cover that we haven't covered already, you can either drop them in the comments of the videos after they've been posted, you can drop them in the chat here, or you can send us an email over at lumixlive@us.panasonic.com. I do read those emails. I do not always respond to them. Actually, I rarely respond to emails from that particular address. But yeah, if you guys have suggestions of topics you want to see us cover, make sure to shoot us an email over there or drop the comments, as I said, and we'll work on building out the schedule and getting you guys some more cool info. Outside of this, we will be back next week. We're going to have, the plan is we're going to have a recorded interview with one of our Australian ambassadors, Chris Bray. Obviously, due to the time zone differences here, okay, yeah, so lockdown at 5 a.m. in Sydney. Oof. Yeah, so the time zones there. Because of that time zone, we're going to be recording the interview with one of our Australian ambassadors, Chris, to talk about G9 wildlife photography, the 10 to 25. He's been playing with that lens, and then we'll get a wildlife photographer's perspective on the 25 to 50 as well. See if it's something that might fit into that kit. Outside of that, I've said that a lot. Thanks for watching, everybody. I will talk to you next week. Make sure, again, get subscribed, hit the reminder icons, hit that bell icon, all that fun stuff. And, yeah, see you next week.